Hello students, I am Dr. Nitin Kumar Agarwal, Associate Professor, Timid College, Moradabad. I extend my heartiest welcome to you all to today's session that is based on financial accounting. So the topics to be covered today are classification of accounts, rules of journal entries of business transactions. As in the previous sessions, already you were aware that how to make the journal entries or how to generalize the business transactions. But as you know that different business transactions take place on the daily basis in the business organization. So you must be aware of those transactions, and as you know that practice definitely is required if you want to be familiar with the different transactions. So today we would be covering the journal entries of different business transactions. So the very first thing is that classification of accounts, because as you know that some rules are there and there are three accounts, and under these three accounts there are some rules of making journal entries. So how to generalize the business transaction? It is based on the classification of accounts and rules under these accounts. So what about the classification of accounts? There are three accounts: personal accounts, real accounts, and nominal accounts. So under the personal accounts, debtors, creditors, individual firms and companies we talk about, and real accounts are those accounts which are related to assets, properties. It means those assets which are tangible, you can see, you can touch, are included in this particular account. And nominal accounts stand for all the expenses, losses, gains and incomes. So you have to keep in your mind whenever you are transacting, whenever you are going to enter a particular business transaction in the books, in the primary books of accounting, that is known as journal. So you have to make the entries as per the rules of journal entries. So what are the rules? As I told you, there are different rules of journal entries. The very first is that what comes in is debit, what goes out credit, and debit the receiver and credit the giver. All the expenses and losses are debit and gains and incomes are credit. So this is the particular components as you see on the screen, that whenever you are making the entries, the particular entry will consist of different components. As the date, you have to mention the date of your transaction when it was occurred, and debit and credit, because every account as per the double entry system is to be debit and credit, because two accounts are affected over there whenever any transaction is taking place. And amount, because the monetary value of the transaction is to be mentioned in the books. So you have to focus on the amount of the transaction. And narration, at the last of the entry you have to give the brief description of the transaction, exactly what happened. So for example, as a loan taken from bank, if you are raising the loan from bank, so that time the bank balance is increased, so bank account debit, and to bank loan account, because there is a particular liability, right? So now we come to the journal entries of the different business transaction, and for the purpose I am just going to the Excel, right? In the MS Excel you will see it. The very first transaction is paid wages to workers. So the wages to workers is the expenses. So no doubt all the expenses, as you are aware now as per the rules, are debit. So the entry, first of all you have to mention the date, that is the August 1st, and the wages account debit, and to cash account, because the cash is involved, you are making the payment to your workers and you are paying the wages in the form of cash. So cash account would be credit. As per the rule, what goes out is credit, and amount is 3,500, and you have to mention the narration: wages paid. The second transaction on 2nd August is that paid for repairs and maintenance. So again, this is the case of the expenses: repair and maintenance account debit to cash account, and narration is repair and maintenance expenses paid, right? And what is the amount? Rupees 1800, rupees 1800. Okay, and 3rd of August there is another transaction, that is sold merchandise on credit, right? So merchandise is what? The product as you are selling, the stock or whatever you are doing the business for, so you are selling your goods, so definitely you have to mention the sales account. But this is the case where you see that Messrs PQR company is the purchaser of your product, so on credit you are selling the goods, so the cash is not involved, and in such kind of the transaction you have to mention the party's name, because it is clearly mentioned in the question that a Messrs PQR company is involved in the transaction. So what would be the particular transaction entry? Messrs PQR debit and to sales account. And what would be the narration, because you are selling the goods, so goods sold on credit you have to mention here in the brief description. And what is amount? Amount is the 14,000, no doubt you have to write the amount 14,000. Okay, and the next one is the 4th of August. This is the transaction on the 4th of August that paid interest on loan. So this is the expenses, again interest on loan account debit. Okay, so you have to debit this particular account, that is interest on loan, right? You are paying the interest, that is interest on loan account debit, and because the cash is going out, so what goes out is the cash, so cash account would be credit in this particular entry to cash account. And what would be the narration? Interest on loan paid, right? And what is the amount? Interest on loan paid, it is 500, right? And on the 5th of August, you see this is the particular transaction, issued shares to investors, because as you know that when you are issuing the shares, right, so that time it is the case of the share capital you are receiving, so definitely bank balance would be increased over there. It is assumed that this is the bank transaction, you are not receiving the cash from the investor, so that time you have to make this particular account, that is the bank account debit, and to share capital account it would be credit, right? And what is the narration? Shares issued to the investor, right? And what is the particular amount of this transaction? 30,000, so you have to mention in the debit and credit side the same amount, that is rupees 30,000. And on 6th of August, the transaction is the received dividend income, so this is the income you received on dividend, right? So cash account debit, cash account would be debit here because you are receiving, the cash comes in, and this is the case of the income, so you have to make this particular account, that is dividend income. So to dividend income account would be credit, right? And the narration would be that income on income of dividend, or the dividend income received, income of, or you can write dividend income, no doubt, dividend income received, right? So cash account debit to dividend income, and the particular amount is rupees 1000, and again in the credit side you have to mention rupees 1000, right? And 7th of August, right, 7th August, this is the particular entry that paid for office cleaning services, right? So again, this is the case of the expenses. I am just making you to learn that what kind of the expenses is taking place in your business and how to give a name. So office cleaning services, right? So office cleaning service, this is the expenses. So office cleaning service account debit, and because you are paying for it, so the cash goes out, and as per the rule you have to make the cash account credit, so to cash account, right? And what would be the narration that office cleaning expenses, you can mention here the expenses, this particular word, office cleaning expenses paid, right? And what is the amount? Rupees 700. So you have to mention rupees 700 in the debit side and in the credit side also. And on the 8th of August you see another transaction, that is return defective goods to supplier, because the supplier, when you receive the goods at the time of purchase, definitely the supplier account would be credited or was credited that time. So now because you are returning that goods to supplier, so supplier, right, would be debit, supplier account debit. And because you are returning the goods, what kind of the goods you are returning to the supplier? That goods which was purchased by you. So now it is the case of the purchase return, so you have to mention here to purchase return account, right? And what would be the narration? That goods return to supplier, okay? And defected goods were there, so you have to record this transaction in this form, and this is the entry for rupees 1000, right? So you have to mention rupees 1000 in both the column of debit and credit amount. And on August 9 you see that sold goods for cash, so cash is involved, cash comes in, cash account debit. And because you are selling the goods, so sales, okay, goods goes outside, so you have not to mention, as I told you earlier, that goods would not be written in your books, only the sales and purchase, these are the terms of the bookkeeping you have to write here. And the narration would be that goods sold for cash, or if you are not mentioning the word cash, it would be assumed that this is the transaction for cash, because no any party name, no any individual firm or company name is mentioned in the entry, right? So goods for cash, sold goods for cash rupees 5000, you have to mention here 5000, right? And as you see that this is another transaction on August 10, that is paid cash for business license renewal. So no issue, whatever the expenses is given in its name, you have to mention here that business license renewal account debit, right? No issue. And because this is the expenses, so you have to mention to cash account. Yes, you have to focus on this particular aspect, that if no any check or the payment is not made through check, so that time it would be assumed that the cash is given, so cash goes out, and on the basis of the transaction in cash you have to mention the cash, and you have to make this particular account credit. And what is the particular amount? As you see, rupees 1000, so you have to mention rupees 1000. This is the particular transaction you made in the cash, right? And what would be the narration? That business license renewal expenses paid, okay? On 11th of August, again there is a transaction that is paid for printing and stationery. So printing and stationery expenses debit, and because the cash goes out, so to cash account, right, you have to mention here. And what would be the narration? Stationery bought, right, you have to mention here stationery bought. And what is the particular amount of this transaction? As you see in the question, rupees 500, so you have to mention again. And on 12th of August you see that deposit cash into bank. So bank is the receiver, so bank account debit, and cash goes out to cash account because the cash goes out. So as per the rules you have to make this entry. And narration would be that deposited cash into bank, right? So you have to mention as a brief description. And what is the amount? Rupees 500, rupees 500, sorry, 5000, right? Yes, you have to avoid the errors, because if the particular transaction when you are recording in the journal, and the laser posting would be based on this journal entries, so it is to be kept in mind that you have to be very sincere when you are making the journal entries, right? So everything should be accurate, because the user of accounting would be gathering the information from these books, right? And at the time of verification, if any error is found, so it has to be adjusted. So in order to avoid such kind of the errors in the bookkeeping in the primary books, it is very significant that you avoid the mistake, right? And on 13th of August another transaction is that drew a check for office expenses. So office expenses account debit, right? Office expenses account debit. And because you are drawing a check, because you are issuing a check, so that time the bank account is involved, so to bank account, right? So you have to credit this particular account. And narration would be that office expenses paid by check. So you have to mention that particular check is being issued. And there is an amount that 2500, and in the credit side again you have to write down 2500. And what about another transaction, that is the 14th of August? So you see that purchase a delivery van. So delivery van comes in because this is an asset. So whenever there is a case of the assets, so name of the assets you have to make the debit. So delivery van you have to write here, that delivery van comes in, delivery van, no doubt you have to write here delivery van account debit to, because you are paying the cash, you are paying the amount in cash to cash account, right? Goes out, it is the rule. So what goes out? The cash goes out, right? So purchase a delivery van. Okay, there is a particular catch. Yes, this is no transaction of cash. This is the transaction of credit, because the credit word is used in the transaction, right? So you have not to mention the cash account. You have to mention to, you are purchasing, so supplier is there, right? Creditor is there, account payable you can mention, right? So to supplier you can write here that supplier of van to supplier account, right? And you have to mention the narration that delivery when purchased on credit, right? So if the party name is given, you have to mention the party's name. Otherwise you can write here the supplier or the accounts payable, because in future you have to make the payment for it, right? So delivery when is given to you, and what is the particular amount of this transaction? You can see that the purchase a delivery van on credit rupees 40,000, right? So 40,000 would be mentioned over here, right, two times, as you are now aware. Okay, and now 15th of August, another entry is that received advance from customer. You are receiving the advance, so cash account debit, right? And to advance from customer account, because if you are mentioning advance from customer account, whatever the advance from any other customer, you can make the entry, and whenever it would be posting into the ledger, all the similar entries would be collected in a particular place, and easily you can find the information that how much advance you have from the customers, different customers. So this is the particular account that to advance from customers. If the party name is given, so that time you can mention the name of that party where you are taking the cash from, right? So this is the transaction on 15th of August. So received advance from customers rupees 6,000. So you have to mention here rupees 6,000, right? Already narration, yes, you have to provide the narration that advance from customer received, right? And on 16th of August you have to make this another transaction, that is on 16th of August, paid advance to supplier. So supplier is the receiver, right? So supplier account debit, and you have to mention to cash account because cash is going out, right? So advance made to supplier, right? Because you have to buy the goods from supplier, so in advance you are giving some cash. So supplier is the receiver, and on the basis of the rule that who is the receiver would be debit, so supplier in this case would be debit, and what is the particular transaction value is rupees 4,000, right? So 4,000 you have to mention here. Right. I think there is no doubt in your mind now because already you have made the different entries or different business transactions, right? So basically, I am just trying to make you learn that what kind of the transactions take place in the business and how to record these transactions systematically in the form of the journal entries. So this is called the journal and the journal entries, and on the basis of these information or the journal entries, you have to post the business transaction into the ledgers as a collection or the group of accounts, so that you would be able at the end of year to prepare the financial statements, right, with those information which would be extracted from the next book, right? So today we are trying to give the form of the journal entries of the different business transaction. Again, now we just come to the next transaction, that is on the 17th of August, right? 17th of August, there is a transaction that paid for business travel. So business travel expenses is there, so you have to mention business travel expenses account debit, right? And because the credit, you have to make the entry. So if the expenses is there, no doubt the cash is involved until the check is issued, right? So every transaction that is not mentioned with the check, right, or the payment is not being made by the check, that time you have to make the cash account credit, right? And you have to make the narration that travel expenses, right? Business travel expenses paid. Okay, and what is the amount of this transaction? It is on 17th of August. So you can read itself. It is displaying that paid for business travel rupees 3,000. So you have to mention rupees 3,000 as a expenses for business travel. You have to mention the amount in the both column, right? And what about the next transaction? It is the August 18, right? So we have to mention the date, August 18. So this is the transaction that paid for legal services. So legal services, uh, right, expenses debit, and because the cash is involved again, so to cash account, right? And the particular narration would be that legal expenses paid. Okay, brief description you have to give in your entry, and what is the amount, that is 2,500. So you have to mention 2,500 rupees, 2,500. So this is the particular transaction as you are seeing, and that is another transaction on August 19th. So what is the transaction? You see that purchase office equipment. So office equipment is coming in your business organization. So this is the assets. Okay, so this is the case. You see, business equipment account would be debit in this case, and because you are making the payment in cash, so it would be credit, right? Cash account would be credit to cash account, right? And narration would be that office equipment purchased, right? I think there is no any doubt, right? And what is the amount? Yes, we have to go upside that office equipment for cash rupees 12,000. So you have to mention rupees 12,000, rupees 12,000. And what is the next transaction on 20th of August, right? So 20th of August, okay. For uh, to make this question easy, we just take these transaction, cut, and we have to make it paste below. Control X we press and we find these transactions here, because we have to make these transactions on this page, right? So on August 20th you find that paid cash and employees as a loan. So employee loan account would be debit, because employee loan account is the asset, because you are giving the loan to any employee. So employee loan account you can open. Employee loan account would be debit, and to cash account, right? So narration would be there that loan given to employee, right? And what is the particular amount? Paid cash to an employee as a loan, right? You are not issuing the check, that's why we are writing here cash account. So amount is rupees 2,000, you have to mention here again 2,000 rupees in the credit side also. And on 21st of August the next transaction is received payment for a previously issued invoice, right? So already you have given the bill, now you are receiving the payments, right? So cash account would be debit, cash account would be debit. And to uh, account receivable you can say, or the supplier you can say, or if the party name is given you have to mention the party name, because there is no any party name. So that time you can make the account receivable, right? Account receivable account, right, would be credit, and you have to mention that received payment uh, from supplier, right? Okay, so you have to mention this particular entry, and the amount is given to you that received payment for a previously issued invoice rupees 9,000. So this is the particular amount rupees 9,000, right? So 9,000 would be in the debit and credit side. And on the 22 of August, you see another transaction, that is paid cash for an insurance claim settlement, right? So insurance claim settlement account debit. It is very easy, because you can identify exactly what is the particular transaction. So you can give a name to that particular expenses. So there is a particular insurance claim settlement, so its account would be debit, right? And because the payment is being in cash form, so to cash account, right? To cash account. And the narration would be that insurance premium paid, right? Insurance premium paid, or you no, sorry, insurance claim, insurance claim settled, right? Because if you are paying the installment premium, that time the insurance premium account would be debit, right? Now this is the case that the insurance claim is going to be settled, right? So insurance claim settled, right? This is the particular narration. And what is the particular amount of this transaction? You see rupees 4,000 and rupees 4,000, right? And on August 23 there is another transaction, that is purchase office stationery. So stationery account would be debit, stationery account right, would be debit, and to cash account because the cash is involved in this transaction, and narration would be that stationery purchased, right. So there is a particular transaction, stationery purchase, rupees 1200, rupees 1200, and the next transaction is 24th of August, that is 24th of August, issued a check for office rent. So you have to write down here office rent account debit, and because the cash is involved in this transactions, you have to make this particular account credit to cash account, right. And narration would be that office rent paid or office expenses paid in the form of the rent, right. So office rent is, it is the transaction on 24th of August. Okay, issued a check for office rent, so you have not to mention here again the cash, right, because this is the case of the check. So you have to mention the bank account, right, because the bank balance is reduced over there by this particular transaction. So bank balance is reduced, right. So you have to avoid this particular mistake, because you have to be very attentive when you are transacting and when you are entering any transaction in your books of accounts. So office rent is paid by check, so rupees 2500, this is the particular worth of this transaction you have to mention, right. And again there is a case of 25 August. The next transaction is the received cash from a sale of old furniture, right. You are receiving the cash, cash comes in, it would be debit, and to office furniture, right, old office furniture. So you can mention here old office furniture or old furniture, right, because the furniture goes out, right. Old office furniture account would be open over there, and narration would be there that old office furniture sold, right. And office furniture is rupees 1000, right. So this is the case where you have to mention rupees 1000, and 25th of August, right. 26th of August, you have to mention this particular entry. 26 paid cash for company event. Okay, any event is taking place, so some expenses incurred that time. So event expenses, you can say event expenses account expenses, right. We have to mention the expenses account debit, and to cash account. So you have to mention to cash account, and the narration would be that event expenses paid, right, in the form of cash. Or you have to observe whether the check is issued or not. Paid cash for a company event, so cash is involved, rupees 3500, rupees 3500, right. And the next transaction is on 27th of August. So you see that 27th of August, the received bank interest, so bank balance is increased over there, not the cash, right. So bank account debit, and to bank interest account, right. You have to make this particular account credit, and narration would be that bank interest received, right. And what is the particular amount is 600. In the both side you have to mention this 600, right. And on the 28th of August, this is the last transaction, you have to make the entry for paid cash for a business seminar. So you have to mention that business seminar account debit, or business seminar expenses account debit. So business seminar account debit, right. And to cash account, so to cash account is involved over there, right. So you have to give the brief description that business seminar expenses paid, right, in the form of cash. So this is the particular transaction of rupees 1200, rupees 1200. So I think now you are aware of the different business transaction, and we made these entries, right. So you can easily enter the particular transaction in the forms of the journal entries in the books of accounting. So I think all the students who are attending this particular class would be familiar with the different transactions which take place in the business firm or business organization, and easily you can make the entries. But you have to keep in mind that first of all you have to identify that what is the particular transaction which is to be recorded in the books by you, and what is the particular head or the account name you have to open. You have to give the name to the particular transaction. So you have to identify that the particular transaction is relating to assets, liabilities, expenses or incomes, right? And on the basis of the accounting rules, and you have to determine that this particular transaction relates to a account. As I told you that there are three accounts: nominal account, personal account, real account. So if you are able to identify that this transaction is relating to this account, so that particular accounting rules would be applied when you are going to make the journal entries. So thank you very much for I think today's session would be very fruitful for you all. Thank you very much.